Welcome. Welcome to this special place. Welcome to the Carter Hill Battlefield Park in downtown Franklin. It's truly humbling to stand here on this ground that has been bought back, piece by piece, by the hands and the hearts of the people who care deeply about this community. We gather with our friends, the American Battlefield Trust, the City of Franklin, Franklin's Charge, Battle of Franklin Trust, for another extremely important milestone, the demolition of this DePriest Building and the further restoration of this Carter Hill Battlefield Park. I think back to how this journey started for me a few years ago. I pulled my trailer 2 lots down onto Mr. Williams' property to salvage some foundation stones with the permission of Franklin's Charge. They were going to be buried there, and they were beautiful stones. And Mr. Williams, who owned the old White House in the more modern building, came out a little disgruntled. Is Mr. Williams here, by the way? A little disgruntled, as to why there was a whippersnapper taking some stones from next door. I said I had permission, but I'd driven over his property, and I began to talk to him about relationships, about what happened here. Talked about how important his piece of property was, how important this block is to the story and narrative of Franklin. And from that grew a relationship that turned into a contract, that turned into grant funding, that turned into city support, that turned into that portion of the block. And that bled into the DePriest property that you see behind us, which is why we're here. Are there any representatives from the DePriest family here? I invited them, but I want to thank them for all their work and their dedication to this. On November 30th, 1864, war came to Franklin, but it wasn't a distant war, but it was Americans fighting Americans. Thousands died right here. Thousands more were wounded. The land around the Carter House was swept with fire and artillery. Division among America was not abstract. It was real, and it was devastating. Families were torn apart, and a town was crippled, and our nation was scarred. But that's why we preserve. That's why the demolition of the DePriest Building isn't just about removing this structure. It's about uncovering our nation's truth. It's about restoring this land so that the generations that come after us can see it as if it were November 30th, 1864, and then feel the weight of what happened here. If we build over our past, as was done, we risk forgetting it. And that's all history. If we forget, we risk repeating the same mistakes. Division is not innocent. It leads to brokenness and to violence. We know deep down this kind of division is not what we were created for. We were meant for unity and relationship, the love of neighbor, and the love of our Creator. Preserving this battlefield in a small way ensures that long after we are all gone, this story is going to be told. And the story will call us away from that division that started that war and that starts the wars in our hearts and minds today. And it drives us toward remembering that peace and unity are worth fighting for in our time as well. And so that's why this is not just about the demolition of a building, but it's about a future for our community and for those that come behind us. Together, we're reclaiming this ground once lost. We're ensuring that Franklin's story will always be told, and we're showing that less division can give way to future unity. And that's all by the demolition of a building and reclaiming a story that is told here every single day to millions and millions of people over the years. So you're here to celebrate, yes, a couple of acres of parkland, but it's so much more. So thank you for being here. I will now introduce Clay Perry, the president of Franklin's Charge.
Wow, great message. Thank you, Patrick. And thanks to everyone attending today. We are indeed reclaiming the battlefield and the 1864 Viewshed at Carter Hill Battlefield Park. I want to say a special word of thanks to Patrick Baggett, who spearheaded the negotiations and ultimately the acquisition of the DePriest Building behind me, and recently, the recently cleared Williams property behind that. All of that on behalf of Franklin's Charge and our many partners. On that note, I can't thank those many partners enough for their help making this and so many other battlefield acquisitions possible over the past 20 plus years. Those partners include, but not limited to, Eric Jacobson and the Battle of Franklin Trust, who not only help with acquisition, but also take on much of the long-term maintenance and interpretation of these sites. Also critically important is the City of Franklin and key people including Mayor Ken Moore, City Administrator Eric Stuckey, Parks Director Lisa Clayton, and Janie Mason. Lisa, thank you for orchestrating this event today. Please. We are deeply indebted to you. Our friends with the state of Tennessee also have been critical to making each acquisition a reality, including Patrick McIntyre, Executive Director of Tennessee Historical Commission, Representative Sam Whitson, and Senator Jack Johnson, as well as Steve McDaniel. Thank you to those partners as well. We're also incredibly thankful for our partners in Washington, including David Duncan, President of the American Battlefield Trust, and Jim Lighthizer, President Emeritus. Also, Kathy Robertson with the American Battlefield Protection Program helped each step of the way in the grant process. Thank you to those partners. Lastly, and certainly not least, the acquisition of this particular property would not have been possible without the significant private donation of $2 million made by John Now, a longtime supporter of battlefield reclamation across the country. He's also a life board member of the American Battlefield Trust. Unfortunately, some health issues kept him from attending today, but we are deeply, deeply appreciative to John, his contribution not only to this building, but another $300,000 to the Williams tract that was just cleared. So thank you, John. These partners have helped make our vision of restoring the battlefield a reality. In addition to those mentioned, I want to thank our remarkable board members for their countless hours of dedicated efforts. That also includes the hardest working advisory board member in history, Julian Bibb. Julian is hiding back here. I want to make sure we give him full attention. His experience, knowledge, and insatiable work ethic are irreplaceable, and we are deeply, deeply appreciative of everything. In closing, Franklin is a special place with a unique and complex history. We're helping to save some of the ground that helps tell an important part of that story. And we have more exciting news. We are signing a contract today on the next parcel of Franklin Battlefield to be saved. More to come on that in the days ahead. Thank you all. And I want to introduce our next speaker, Jim Roberts, past president of the Battle of Franklin Trust.
Thank you, Clay, and to all of you who have been a part of this. This is a terrific day and one that we have all looked forward to for years. The Battle of Franklin Trust has been delighted to share partnership with Franklin Charge and all those who have been a part of this for all this period of time. There's so many people. One person, though, that I do want, that is no longer with us, but is with us in spirit, that had so much to do with all of this, and that's Ernie Bacon, who we lost earlier this year. My friend Ernie and friends of so many of you, his coffee group several months ago dedicated a bench that is right over behind the wall, the pyramid of cannonballs over where the Pizza Hut was, along that tree line. So I invite you, if you have a chance, to go over there and see the bench that we have, we placed there in Ernie's memory. And Ernie's with us today, I assure you, in spirit. So with that having said, and thank you all for being here, I want to introduce our Mayor, Ken Moore.
Try not to trip as I run up here. That'd be embarrassing, wouldn't it? Probably not my most embarrassing moment in my life, though. I do want to recognize the Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Many of them are here, and raise your hand if you're part of the Franklin Board of Mayor and Aldermen. Thank you, Brandy and Alderman Brown and others. And it's particularly always great to see Steve McDaniel, who has been such an advocate for us in Franklin with their battlefield preservation effort. And Senator Johnson, who's always it's so many things and so supportive of everything we do. And I hope Clay mentioned everybody else that needed to be mentioned. But for those we didn't mention, thank you, thank you, thank you. Impossible, impossible, impossible. Those remarks came from citizens and visitors trying to imagine what the troops were seeing at the Battle of Franklin when they looked north and south. A viewshed of non-contributing buildings, Pizza Hut, a strip mall, and the DePriest Building have blocked those views for way too long. The installation of the battle line markers has added a lot of value to us to help to understand the width of the length of that breastworks here in Franklin. But now we're on the verge of having a really clear view for understanding the hell that occurred in this spot. What has been left to imagination and books is on the verge of being a real thing. 20 properties, 11 organizations, untold volunteers have made the impossible now possible. We should all be very proud of what is happening in Franklin. And we're not done. So I close in saying God bless. I would ask for protection and unity among us, and bless those that sacrificed in Franklin. And now let me introduce our Parks Director, Lisa Clayton.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this wonderful group. And we had a great time. I got to visit with several last night, a lot of women, and we talked about preservation. We talked about where we were from, and then we began to talk about things, more preservation. And so as I went home, I started thinking, and I was looking over what I might say today. And then I began to look at this wonderful program, and I thought, I'm the only female. So am I the rose amongst all these thorns? Or am I the thorn amongst all these roses? Anyway, as a Southern woman, you can take it the way you like. But anyway, I have a few things to share of thank yous before I share a few words with you today. First is Franklin's Charge and their board and the amazing people behind the scenes for many years. This is such a wonderful day, and thank you for your leadership. Battle of Franklin Trust, Lori and Eric and their entire team, it just takes a village, and y'all know that, and we're so thankful to be part of that. Our Board of Mayor and Aldermen that are here today and those that are not able to join us, thank you for your leadership and your support. We cannot do parks and quality of life in Franklin without them. And of course, Eric Stuckey and Public Works City Administrator Mark Hilty for their internal support to all of our team, along with many of departments. Of course, you see Parks represented, our Parks and Recreation today, but it's really about all of our departments that play part of this, and I couldn't do it without them, especially Jamie Mason today. She shows up and she shows out. So thank you so much. She is such a wonderful colleague, and I'm so proud to work with her. Today we stand on a sacred ground, not just a battlefield, but a living testament to resilience, remembrance, and renewal. What was once a place of conflict has been reclaimed as a public park, a space for reflection and unity. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It was seeded decades ago with men and women who saw beyond the scars of war and imagined a future rooted in preservation. Mary Pierce is not able to be with us today, but Angela Calhoun is one of those women that are here today that really, those are the people in whom I've learned so much from. It's been an honor to walk alongside them, learning that true stewardship begins with attention to detail and a deep respect for history. As we pass this heritage to the next generation of dedicated city advocates, we must acknowledge individuals like our historic planner, Emily Huffer, and our planning team that is here with us today, and others in our community who work tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring that preservation remains in the heart of our efforts. This legacy lives on with every tree planted, every trail carved, and every story told. And we look ahead as we carry forward a spirit continuing to uphold the values that define Franklin. Our city's vision statement captures this beautifully. America's finest hometown, driven by excellence, balancing preservation and progress. It's not just a motto, it's a commitment to thoughtful growth, cultural integrity, and civic pride. And speaking of pride, it's a privilege to introduce someone who embodies that very heart of this community, a Franklin resident and a tireless advocate. Senator Johnson's unwavering support and belief in our shared vision make him one of our greatest cheerleaders. His leadership reminds us that when community comes together, progress isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Please welcome to the podium Tennessee State Senator Jack Johnson.
Wow, thank you, Lisa, for that great introduction. I'm very honored for the kind words, and what a great day this is. It's a great day for our community and certainly for our state as well. I was thinking, when you look at all the names and the people who are speaking, and all the people who have worked so hard on making this day possible, really for many years, I can't help but think of the word partnership. It's a wonderful partnership that we have here in this community between our preservation partners, and they're listed in the program. Make sure you take a look at that. Partnership with our city government. We have such incredible leadership with Mayor Moore and our Board of Mayor and Aldermen and the great work that they do. And I'd like to think that the state is a good partner in that work as well. And if you're going to talk about the state or the state involvement, I can't let a moment like this go by without acknowledging my friend, the late Charles Sargent, who worked so hard in terms of battlefield preservation. There is a beautiful visitor center that is coming up out of the ground right over there, and Charles worked on that for many years when he was in the General Assembly. And obviously my very dear friend Sam Whitson, former Representative Sam Whitson, who is here with us today, who is such a powerful advocate and champion for these preservation efforts. And also former State Representative Steve McDaniel, who I got to know when he was in the General Assembly. And you want to talk about someone who's passionate about this and works on this all over the state, it's Steve McDaniel. So very, very grateful to have them here with us today. And I have to say that word former before state representative has more and more appeal to it the longer I've been doing this. I wanted to say a quick word too about the fiscal impact of this type of preservation. You know, we're not just preserving beautiful land and making our city more attractive and obviously paying tribute to the horrific events that took place on this very ground. There is a real economic impact with this that I've come to learn. In my capacity as the majority leader of the state Senate, I sponsor the state budget every year, and I can tell you that these tourism dollars that are generated by having these types of assets, that people will come from all over the country, all over the world really, to come and see these incredible places. And that has a real impact. We brag a lot about Tennessee, and we don't have a state income tax. We don't have a statewide property tax. You know, we're one of the best fiscally managed states in America. That, in large part, is due to the people who come here and stay in our hotels and eat in our restaurants because they want to come see these incredible assets. So there is a real value on many, many levels. Last thing I will say, I live right down here on Lewisburg Pike. Lewisburg Pike is closed. I hope it gets opened pretty soon. As a result of that closure, anytime I'm coming to downtown Franklin, I literally cut right through here and I come by here. And all I got to say is, let's tear down this ugly building, okay? Y'all want to do that today? Up next, I want to introduce someone who's a great friend to all of us here, and I can tell you that he is a very, very respected voice up on Capitol Hill in the General Assembly when it comes to all matters relative to historical preservation, making sure our kids are learning about our history, making sure that we're learning and understanding our history, because it really, really is important. Our next speaker is a great friend, the Executive Director of the Tennessee Historical Commission, Patrick McIntyre. Patrick.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Senator Johnson, for those really nice, that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate you, and for all the remarks that have been made this morning. If I don't mention your name, it's because y'all have already been recognized, but I just feel like I'm among so many friends today, and it's such a powerful moment, and it's so amazing to be here, and it's always great in celebration. We see in preservation because we have to celebrate our wins because sometimes we lose a lot more than we save. So I'm just so excited to be here today. And so on behalf of the Tennessee Historical Commission, Tennessee Wars Commission, I want to say, now it's been almost 75 years, beginning with the near demolition of the Carter House around 1951 for a gas station, that the state of Tennessee and the Tennessee Historical Commission has been a partner down here with you in Franklin, and that became one of our very first state historic sites. And this goes on today with this incredible event where we were able to put in $957,000 from our in matching funding to our friends at Franklin Charge as part of the 160th commemoration of the battle here last year. So we also awarded $1.7 million in funding to Franklin's Charge for the Williams tract down the street, and $1 million to save a parcel out at Roper's Knob to provide parking and access. So we have a big footprint here. A lot of this is made possible by the Civil War Sites Preservation Fund, which has awarded now over $20 million in matching funding since it was established over a decade ago to places all across Tennessee. It's helped save over 1,100 acres, not just in places, rural areas like Shiloh, around Fort Donaldson, but right here in urbanized areas like Franklin, Nashville, Murfreesboro, where it helps protect open space, hallowed battlefield ground, etc. And so that funding was made possible by our friends in the General Assembly. I know Steve McDaniel has already been recognized, and also Representative Sargent, but I can't think of how much I need to thank them for everything that they have brought to that over the years. And then, of course, Nina Skall, I see her right there, our Tennessee Wars Commission Program Director, does so much. She is an incredible resource, and in her 6+ years here, she has brought so much to this team and is directly responsible for a lot of this. So I want to recognize her from our staff. Thank you, Nina. Also want to recognize my board members. I've seen at least 2 of them here. Our Vice Chair Doris McMillan is here from right here in town. Jim Kay of our board is here. And am I missing anybody? Please raise your hand if you're from our board and I've missed seeing you this morning. I apologize. We have a great commission board. So next door, I don't quite hear the construction going on, but we have an $8.5 million visitor center, the Herbert Harper Visitor Center, named after my predecessor of 32 years, who a great person from here in Franklin. And that's a capital project underway. It was also made possible by $2 million of direct contributions from the board from our Historic Property Land Acquisition Fund. And that's going to be the focal point here for everybody visiting to learn about this battle and what we're doing today with, I think we have over 20+ acres, if that's right. Eric will tell me if I'm wrong, but that's an amazing thing when you think about it and how much we've been able to reclaim here in some of the most expensive real estate in Tennessee. So, and that's all part of what we're celebrating today. So I want to recognize on that note Eric Jacobson and the wonderful folks at the Battle of Franklin Trust. We transferred the management of that organization about, was it 15 years ago now? It was a long time ago now, and the professionalism that they brought to this The increased visitation and everything is just so incredible. And we put together a master plan that's resulted in the things like the visitor center and some other changes that are going in at the site, and it's very exciting. So none of this would be possible without our friends at the American Battlefield Trust, and I thank them for their extraordinary leadership. Working with them for over 20 years in my prior role with the Tennessee Preservation Trust as well as now. And so Jim Lighthizer, David Duncan, John now I know isn't able to be here today, but he did an enormous amount to help fund this, as has been referenced. Finally, I want to let y'all know a little something that I can't help but learn, but think about the irony of this a little bit. So about a decade ago, I led an effort at the commission to purchase a property in Columbia down the road here next to the James K. Polk home. Today, that's the Polk Home Kitchen Garden. If you've been down there, you see it's a really nice part of the property there. At that time, it was an old photography studio. It was kind of falling in. And I had these great conversations. We wanted to buy that parcel and put it into the security area of the property. So I had these great conversations with the owner. It happened to be a guy named Bill DePriest. And even though it was a pretty dilapidated building and not much going in, he wanted to let me know he put a hot tub in there and there were some improvements that he thought would affect the valuation. And sure enough, the place was basically a shell, but there was a hot tub in there. But I just wanted to offer my thanks to Mr. DePriest and his family. I think they're not here today, but I just also wanted to commend him for how farsighted he was by buying properties next to Tennessee State Historic sites, because it turned out to be probably a good investment. And I want to say this building cost a lot more than the one in Columbia, but that's something that I thought was an interesting little fact for you. So I've recently announced my retirement from this position coming up in mid-November, and I'm going to be excited about pursuing other opportunities. I won't be going too far away. I'll continue to work with y'all, and I stand in awe of all that has been accomplished thanks to you all, and it's all your good work. And with that, I'm going to say it's a real pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Mr. Jim Lighthizer, who's been a part of this for decades as well. He's the president emeritus of the American Battlefield Trust, and he's one of our staunchest allies, as with all the folks in the organization. So without further ado, Mr. Lighthizer, please come up.
My wife said to speak up, so I'll do my level best. Thank you, Patrick. To say it is a pleasure to be here is a massive understatement. But before I make my comments, there's a couple people I'd like to commend to you, one of which you may never have ever heard of, a guy by the name of Dick Moe, M-O-E. Dick was the president of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and for a generation was the most significant person in America for historic preservation, and he passed last week at the age of 88. He was a wonderful guy. He was a former member of the American Battlefield Trust Board. Terrific guy. I ask you to remember him. He was a special man. Special man. A couple other people I'm probably stealing some of David's thunder, David Duncan, who, by the way, is doing a great job as my successor to the CEO of the American Battlefield Trust. Dave has done a terrific job. He knows that. He knows I think that. Another person just to mention is Mike Granger, who's former chairman of the board of the American Battlefield Trust, the guy with the pot belly here in the back here. Of course, Rod Heller, who we honor, I guess, about every other week around here at the dinner or some kind of thing. Rod, don't let it go to your head. And certainly last but not least that I want to mention is my friend and a former member of the Board of Trustees, and that's Trace Atkins, who is standing unobtrusively in the back somewhere there. I've said this before, and so to those of you, which is most of you that have heard this, I apologize, but I can't resist saying it. I came here in 2002, and I came here at the behest of a couple of people. One, I believe, was Julian Bibb, that smooth-talking, slick Southern lawyer. And another one was Mary Pierce, that mouthy little lady who I said to somebody earlier today, there's two things I'm real happy about. One, I never got married to her, never. And the second thing, I never got on the wrong side of her because she's tough. I'm sorry she isn't here so I can insult her, but she's a great lady. And anyway, there was about 7 or 8 of them, and they asked me to come down because they were fighting a losing battle for the library that was proposed to be built on battleground land. And preparatory to the meeting, I went around and talked to some elected officials because I'm a recovering politician. And one of them was Rogers Anderson. And he, as you know, county mayor. I was a county mayor. They call them county executives in Anne Arundel or Maryland. So I knew what his job was. We had a candid conversation. I talked to some other elected officials, and the net of it was that these preservation people are well intended, but they didn't know what they were doing, and they just weren't. They were almost treated. Well, they were treated with disdain. They were just kind of annoying people. And I remember going back the next day and giving them a little speech, and I said, I checked it out, and y'all don't know what you're doing. And maybe I wasn't that direct, but that's the net of it. And I told them, I said, get into politics or get out of preservation, because you're just wasting your time, and you're wasting my time asking me to come down here. And I left, and I thought I'd never hear from them again, because I've had that happen a lot over the course of my 21 years. And of course, something changed. And folks, to be effective in preservation, there's 2 things you have to have. Local preservation. One, you've got to have some level of political clout. They got to respect you, if not fear you in the case of Mary Pierce. But you have to have that. And the second thing is you have to have the ability to raise money. Money and political influence are inextricably combined for local preservation. And I look back here 23 years later, and it is astounding what you've accomplished. I mean, you don't run for office around here unless you're a preservationist, if you expect to win. And that's, right? I mean, that just happens to be reality, folks. That wasn't the case 23 years ago. I think you had one preservation on the board, that was Ernie Bacon. God rest his soul. And that was it. And now, everybody's come to Jesus, and they all want it. They're all preservationists. And the second thing is raise money. I mean, it's $30 million you've raised and climbing. I mean, for a local organization, folks, give yourself a round of applause, because it costs you plenty. It's astounding. I would say this, and I've also said this before, but there is no question in my mind that the Franklin community is the most effective local preservation organization in America in the last quarter century, in my opinion, and I've been all over this country. What you have done is remarkable. I mean, you're in the same league with city of Charleston, South Carolina, which revolutionized the idea. The city of Annapolis, Maryland, and I know that place from the last 50, 60 years. It's all changed. And like you, their biggest problem is where do you park all the damn tourists? And the people that want to bring their money, spend it, and then leave. It's a wonderful thing. But the other thing you've done, and you all know this, but is you have added immensely to the quality of life of this community. You have made this place a place where half the darn country wants to come and live. And it's because of the quality of life, and preservation has been crucial to that. Not to mention good for business, which was mentioned before. And I think it's so appropriate that we're here today to celebrate the purchase and destruction of this monstrosity behind me, because the Battle of Franklin, I was telling Trace earlier, in the 1930s there was serious talk of making this a national park, this battlefield, like at Gettysburg, like in Antietam, Stones River, and somehow it got lost in the shuffle. And what a shame that was. What a shame that was. Because the Battle of Franklin is an important part of American history, a tragic part of American history, but a part we best not forget at our own peril. And what you all are doing as a community is bringing that battle back to life, telling that story that was largely forgotten. And when you think about the context of next year, we celebrate this country's 250th birthday. What the Battle of Franklin was a part, albeit tragic, of one of the greatest stories ever told in world history, and that is the story, the history of the most successful, oldest democratic republic, experiment in human self-governance in world history. And this community had a part of that. And now, thanks to you, it's going to be remembered forever. And with that, let me turn it over to Eric Jacobson. Thank you all very much.
Julian, thanks for inserting me between the former CEO of the trust and the current CEO of the trust, but I'll do the best that I can. I'm not going to talk a lot about the Battle of Franklin, but I was thinking as Jim was talking, I guess I took the lesson about getting involved in politics as well, because we work with the city of Franklin. We now work with the city of Spring Hill. We've worked with the state of Tennessee. We worked with a couple of different counties, Murray and Williamson County, to get things done. And it truly is, it's a very special partnership. But I've also been thinking about the building a lot that's right behind me, because I've been looking at this building. I know some of you who were born and raised around here have probably seen it for much longer, but I've been looking at it for 30 years. And I'm not ashamed to say that I have coveted this building, but not in a way other than I wanted to destroy it, because I always thought that it impeded the ability to tell a story. And I mentioned to David, and I think I just said this to Mayor Moore before we started, we're not just reclaiming a battlefield. We're actually reclaiming a historic viewshed. There was a house that stood right about where y'all are sitting that was built about 1915 or 1920. There was a house just north of it which was butted right up to the Carter House outbuildings that was built in 1912. The front part of this building was built in 1946. The house behind it, which was one of the first on the battlefield in this area, was built about 1895. The house beyond it, which was converted to an office space years ago, was built about 1898. This was American progress, and this is how we remembered our history. We saved Gettysburg, and we saved Shiloh, and we saved Antietam, but we covered up so much. We covered up Atlanta, we covered up most of Nashville. Much of what was around Richmond was nearly lost, and the Franklin battlefield, when I first saw it, didn't exist except the ground that was right adjacent to Carter House and that little bit of land around Carnton. The rest of it was just covered up. And it's nobody's fault, because sometimes progress is just putting the past behind you and trying not to remember how terrible it was. And it was terrible. I'm glad Jim mentioned the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. We're just months away. We have existed for nearly a quarter of a millennia as Americans of different backgrounds and different geographic locations. And in the 1850s and up to 1860 and 61, this experiment was very much in doubt. There were obviously great divisions. It's what led to the war. But there was no guarantee that the country would survive. And much of the world was watching what we were doing. The kings and the queens and the despots and the dictators were convinced that a government of the people could never last, that eventually it would implode. It would decay and rot through civil war. They were almost right. By the fall of 1864, there were well over 650,000 dead. For many years, it's been discussed that the American Civil War cost the lives of about 625,000. That number has historically always been low. In recent years, careful census evaluation has showed us that by the time it was over, almost 750,000 were dead. When I came here years ago and was somehow sparked to write a book, and I must say I have to thank Angela Calhoun for ever giving me a chance, the former director of Carnton, to have a chance to work in this field. Dreams do come true. It's like Christmas for me every day of the year. to tell this story and to inspire people about our past, but also our present, what our future could be. The outcome of the war was not decided in 1864. And that was clear to me, and I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but it was very clear to me that it wasn't decided. The naysayers said it was. You'd almost think that after Gettysburg and Vicksburg that there was no more Civil War till they got to Appomattox. That's not true. The fighting in 1864 was savage and awful. It is as bad as anything Americans have ever known, except perhaps for 1944, when it came to combat. It was unparalleled violence. The Wilderness in Spotsylvania, in Cold Harbor, the Overland Campaign, which leads to Petersburg. Then the fighting all the way from Dalton, Georgia to Atlanta. Tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of men killed, wounded, captured. The country hemorrhaging. A second presidential election on the cusp of war and then during the war, and the president was reelected. But the war was not over. And it came to Franklin. And as I stood here thinking today, what would be an appropriate comparison, I will share you with this, or share this with you. Because I'm one of those crazy people that's actually been to probably any significant Civil War site in America. I'm that nuts. I go everywhere, or have been everywhere. Because, well, A, I wanted to, but B, because I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand what was happening in Arkansas, what was happening in Missouri, what was happening in Louisiana, what was happening in Mississippi. Everybody talks about Virginia, but yes, I went there too. And then I ended up in Pennsylvania, and then I ended up in Maryland, and then I ended up in Tennessee, and I went to Georgia. I went everywhere. I was even in Florida. I went to South Carolina last, which is really odd that I went to Fort Sumter at the end of the whole string, but I knew what started it, but I thought I'd go there too. If you go to Shiloh, there is the peach orchard. If you go to Stones River, there's the slaughter pen. If you go to Fredericksburg, there's the stone wall. If you go to Antietam, there's the sunken road. If you go to Gettysburg, there's the angle, Little Round Top, the copse of trees. And if you go to Spotsylvania, there is the mule shoe. To those of us who live in this world, these are names that we probably grew up on. We know them like people know Omaha Beach, Normandy. The sheer magnitude of what happened. And to think that progress covered that up in Franklin, or simply that people just forgot, which is a real curse of time when it comes to history, because so much is lost because of time. There's an entire generation of Americans who are now, well, at least able to have a beer or a drink, who have no memory of 9/11. That is not their fault, but it is incumbent on us to teach people about the past. That's what we're doing here as well. We're teaching people that the war was not yet over, and the fate of this government of the people, by the people, and for the people, hopefully would not perish from the earth. And it didn't. But 10,000 or so more Americans from Mississippi and Missouri and Tennessee and Alabama and Ohio and Indiana and Illinois and Kentucky and Pennsylvania had to bleed into this soil, just like they had at all the other places I just mentioned. We are taking back our history. We are not just reclaiming a battlefield, and I could not be any more proud to be part of this effort. I want to thank all of you. I want to, especially on a Franklin's Charge plane, especially thank Clay Perry and Patrick Baggett for grabbing the torch and literally reigniting it and moving it forward. We manage 3 sites and help with interpretation. They are the spirit of volunteer advocacy, and they are serious. They don't run around looking to have their pictures made. It isn't about social functions or whatever fun stuff we can do. It's about serious preservation. which has always been at the heart of this movement. Thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to introduce David Duncan, CEO of the Battle of Franklin, or of the American Battlefield Trust. Sorry.
Thank you, Eric. I got a promotion. That's great. I said this last week at the event honoring Rod and Kay, so I apologize for those of you who heard it then. But when we brought our national membership here for a conference, probably about 250 people or so, about 2 years ago, of course, we did tours out here. Eric gave some great tours on this site. And I remember walking up to Eric after the end of the tour, because I come over here and look at these wonderful interpretive signs that tell you what happened, and you look straight into the side of this building. I said, I want that place more than I want my next month of meals. And so here we are today. So this is just a wonderful event. Thank you all for being here. I would ask that if you take nothing else away from this event and this celebration today, I hope you will always remember this. Nothing about this day was inevitable. What do I mean by that? I look at this and think, folks, the word hasn't been used yet. We've talked about impossible. We've talked about other challenges. I believe we are meeting on the site of a miracle not just born of faith, although in the battlefield preservation movement, you better have faith because most of the time you're dealing with impossible odds. Now, this is a miracle that was born also of three other critical elements, in my perspective: leadership, determination, and generosity. So on leadership, we've gone through a lot of names. I may repeat a couple of them, but I echo what Jim said a few minutes ago, that I can safely say that there has been never, ever, anywhere else in the history of this country, a group of local citizens who have come together, not just to preserve, not just to protect, but to reclaim an American battlefield. That is unique in the country and its history. From multiple governors and staff members, including Chief of Staff Joseph Williams, to mayors, we've talked about current Mayor Ken Moore, to the various aldermen, Patrick Baggett, thank you, Patrick, Pam Lewis, so many others have all played a role, from former state legislatures, my good friend Steve McDaniel, who's done so much for this place and for the entire state, to Sam Whitson, who I've really become friends with here in the last year or so, current Representative Lee Reeves, current State Senator Jack Johnson, to our friend Jim Kay with the Tennessee Historical Commission. The list goes on and on and on. That's leadership, folks. It continues with the state historic preservation offices, the volunteer boards and supporters of the Battle of Franklin Trust, Franklin's Charge, and of course, our Superman within our midst, Julian Bibb. As always, he hides back there. He's slinking down lower and lower in his chair. But you have all accomplished, that word again, a miracle, and miracles here in Franklin, and on a scale unlike anything that's ever been seen before. And if I can brag a little bit, I salute my fellow trustees, former chairman of the board Mike Granger, and a local resident here, and the generous members of the American Battlefield Trust, who have never declined an opportunity to financially participate in saving a piece of ground, even if it's a quarter acre here at Franklin. We know, our national constituency knows how important this place is, and they want to be part of something special. I also must recognize the leadership of Eric Jacobson. It pains me to do so, but I must do it. Whose thrilling book is now the generational account of this battle and this campaign. And I've got to believe that his book is at least somewhat partially responsible for the renewed interest in this battle
in this campaign that's bringing those tourists here to this area. So we have all, working together, played a very long game when it comes to preservation, and today we get to celebrate the fruits of those labors by knocking down, as it has been so lovingly called, this monstrosity behind us. After leadership, of course, comes determination. And the effort to save and reclaim this hallowed ground started decades ago. Over that time, there have been, shall we say, competing visions of what this ground should look like. Housing subdivisions, strip malls, other commercial development, much of which, as Eric said, had already obliterated the land where 161 years ago this November, this was one of the worst places on planet Earth to be. Imagine, if you can, above the roar of the traffic, the ribcage rattling blasts of the guns, the close quarter, hand-to-hand bayonets fighting over the top of the trench line, which is outlined immediately behind me. Men falling on nearly every yard of ground that you can see from where you were standing right now. And it went on for hours and hours and hours. So the determination to save and restore Franklin, for me, I haven't heard him mentioned yet here today, and maybe there's a reason for that, but I'll go ahead and say his name. For me, it was Robert Hicks, in very large measure. I did not know him. I didn't know Robert nearly as well as many of you did, but I feel safe to say that we probably feel his absence very keenly today. I think, however, he would be thrilled at what we have accomplished together and what we're going to do today. And I would not be too surprised if some of you maybe feel his presence or see somebody in the crowd who looks kind of like Robert walking around in the back, maybe with a bourbon in his hand. Without his determination, I don't know that we would be standing here today. The third element, of course, that made this day possible, this miracle possible, is generosity. And because we preservationists only deal with willing sellers, nobody's taking anybody's property here. We pay fair market value for a person's property. We must work in an increasingly challenging and competitive marketplace to raise the private dollars, to multiply them and take advantage of the matches at the state and federal level to preserve hallowed ground. So I need to recognize just a couple more people one more time who have helped us so generously. Again, Rod and Kay, thank you both so much for all you have done. We've talked about what you did to step in and save the golf course property until the preservationists could raise the money to preserve it forever, but we are indebted to you for doing that. So. And we've mentioned his name, and I'm desperately disappointed that he's not here to hear me brag on him. But I've known, like Jim Lighthizer, even longer. I've known John now for 25 years, and no accolade is too outlandish to bestow on John. Franklin, I think, is very lucky to have garnered John's particular interest as a preservationist. He doesn't have this level of interest in battlefields all across the country. He loves them, and he loves going to them, but Franklin is very special to him. And as we all know, when John cares about something, things start to happen. And so not only has John personally given more out of his own pocket to restore and save this battlefield than any other single individual on planet Earth, he's expended just as much personal capital to ensure that the battlefield matching funds that we depend on are there at both the state and national level. Without that work, our job becomes exponentially more difficult, if not impossible. So John is the last person who would call attention to himself as having played a role in this miraculous transformation here at Franklin. That's why I'm doing it, because his transformational generosity needs to be remembered and celebrated. So I thank also the people who have made this day, this miracle possible. It's an honor, and I truly mean that, to be with you today. I would not have missed this for the world. It is so important, Jimmy. So before we begin the demolition of the building behind me, perhaps you will take one moment of silence, and perhaps you'll hear, as I do, this hallowed ground beneath our feet calling out to us in the timeless words of the hymn, Amazing Grace. I once was lost, but now am found. Thank you. I turn it back over to Patrick.
Thank you all again for coming. And to conclude, what we've done here, as you have heard, matters. And there are other, this was referred to as a miracle, I think you did. And there are other miracles happening all over Franklin, done by the Heritage Foundation and the African American Heritage Society. And that's the culture of Franklin. And it is battlefield, but there's telling all of our history that's important too. So leave here with that energy to go out and serve and find a way to be a part of one of those projects and support all the things happening here. All right, without further ado, we have, I need to call up David Duncan, Jim Lighthizer, and Mayor Moore, and we have a sledgehammer, a few sledgehammers for you. And then Clay Perry is going to, I believe, hold the bell, or someone, yep. Or Clay, why don't you give everyone the instruction?
Make a quick comment.
Yes.
Just so you can hear me, and thank you for bringing up Robert Hicks, who is a beloved figure in this town, a deep, close, personal friend of mine, and to many of you here. And we had not mentioned him, but he is part of this, and we were just about to mention him. He is here with us today. We have a antique bell that was that he owned. Was his bell that we're going to ring today. So he is here in spirit, and we're going to ring out. He'll be a part of the ringing of this future demolition here. So we've got the three hammers. We're going to ring Robert's bell so he can be a part of this with us, and his voice, so to speak, will be heard in the ceremony. So thank you all again for being here. And without further ado, we'll have each bell ringing.
Amen.